The Welsh Government have committed to making themselves a feminist government. However, as Cardiff University academic Dr. Alison Parkin has pointed out in a paper which comprised part of the Gender Equality Review, there are different types of feminism. She writes, "The social processes of gendering are constructed and carried through an oppositional binary, whereby differently valued attributes, skills and behaviours are ascribed to men and women. Gender is an active process in which we are impelled to perform the signs of masculinity and femininity, which vary over time and context, to be intelligible to others and to ourselves. Liberal feminism has interpreted gender equality as meaning treating women the same as men. This is seeking equality of opportunity and was a goal of second-wave feminism." Parkin continues, "Latterly, postmodernist feminisms, queer and trans theories have argued that on the way to creating a level playing field, the gender binary should be challenged, disrupted, and the fluidity of gender identities recognized. This is a feminism derived from postmodern ideas that aim to change society by changing language, through the downplaying of the significance of biological sex, whose categories are seen to be oppressive, and the elevation of the significance of a personal gender." In the Encyclopaedia Britannica it states, "Postmodernism is largely a reaction against the intellectual assumptions and values of the modern period in the history of Western philosophy. Indeed, many of the doctrines characteristically associated with postmodernism can fairly be described as the straightforward denial of general philosophical viewpoints that were taken for granted during the 18th century Enlightenment, though they were not unique to that period. The most important of these viewpoints are the following. Number one, there is an objective natural reality, a reality whose existence and properties are logically independent of human beings. Postmodernists dismiss this idea as a kind of naive realism. Number two, the descriptive and explanatory statements of scientists and historians can, in principle, be objectively true or false. The postmodern denial of this viewpoint, which follows from the rejection of an objective natural reality, is sometimes expressed by saying that there's no such thing as truth. Number three, through the use of reason and logic, and with the more specialized tools provided by science and technology, human beings are likely to change themselves and their societies for the better. Postmodernists deny this Enlightenment faith in science and technology as instruments of human progress. Number four, reason and logic are universally valid. For postmodernists, reason and logic too are merely conceptual constructs and are therefore valid only within the established intellectual traditions in which they are used. Postmodern ideas are both the rejection of Enlightenment values and Christian values with its concept of the Logos. Anonymous user Gender Detective describes the difference between liberal feminism and queer theory feminism. Queer theorists see the intimate connection between biological sex and oppression, and they react by dismantling the notion of biological sex. Feminists see the intimate connection between biological sex and oppression, and they react by dismantling oppression. That's the fundamental difference between liberals and radicals. One sacrifices truth to avoid confronting power, and one confronts power to avoid sacrificing truth. It is a radical move for a government to deny that there is an objective natural reality, but this is the position that the Welsh Government have adopted.
Well, Llywydd, my starting point is the same as Penny Mordaunt, the UK Minister responsible at the time, who said that the UK government's starting point was that transgender women are women. And that's my starting point in this debate.
In March 2024, Jane Hutt visited the University of South Wales to discuss the progress towards gender equality in Wales. The event marked 29 years since the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women. In a keynote speech, Hutt said, "We cannot underestimate the significance of the conference. It was an important turning point in the global agenda for gender equality. Since then, we in Wales have made great strides towards achieving gender equality, but there is still so much work to do. The Welsh Government's Advancing Gender Equality in Wales plan, published in 2020, sets out our priorities for the short and medium term and looks to set long-term commitments for the future. This plan continues to develop and is a key part of policy development within Welsh Government." As it states on the University of Illinois website, queer theorists' contention is that there is no set normal, only changing norms that people may or may not fit into, making queer theorists' main challenge to disrupt binaries in hopes that this will destroy difference as well as inequality. Queer theory seeks to achieve equality of outcome, but as it aims to achieve this aim by changing language, it cannot allow for any challenge to this. It relies on bullying. One politician who speaks out on the dangers of queer theory is Alba MP Neil Hanvey. On March the 1st, 2024, he spoke out against a bill to ban trans conversion therapy introduced by Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle.
My experience is imbued with naked bullying and harassment that I experienced in my political group in this place. And it was not because I was transphobic or anything like that. It's a ridiculous accusation. It was because I won't submit to queer theory. I won't submit to gender ideology. I won't submit to anyone telling me that I am same gender attracted, because it is a nonsense. That is not the truth. And it's not hyperbole, therefore, to say that this type of legislation is the thin end of the wedge, and it has the potential to be the most dangerous, regressive, illiberal and authoritarian policy proposal that I have ever witnessed in my lifetime.
Conservative MP and heterosexual woman Alicia Kearns seemed not to understand the concerns raised about the deliberate modification of language and lambasted Hanvey. Barry Wall, aka the EDI Jester, was angry.
"I've seen some extraordinary things in my life, and I've seen some stuff in my life that has shocked me, but this made me feel sick. It actually made me feel physically sick, in which an MP, Neil Hanvey, who is a fine representative of gay rights, a fine representative, as you'll see, Neil Hanvey, is berated, where you just watch it and see. All right, let's start. Here's what Neil said to provoke the response that we shall later look at.
The Honourable Lady has made a really important point about LGBT people coming to this place and feeling safe to argue their position on this important matter. I have experienced the most horrendous bullying in this place because I take a contrary view, or a more guarded view than some in the LGBT community. In fact, people in the LGBT community are often referred to as bigots and transphobes and other slurs, just because we have concerns about legislation such as this, and we want to make sure that young LGBT people are protected, and trans people. Does she agree with me that that rule must apply to all sides of any debate, and not just one side that she favours?
She's absolutely right.
As you can see, Neil has drawn a clear distinction there between the LGB and the T, which is something that we all now need to do, seeing as the TQ plus is immaterial to me. Don't care what they do. They can go away and leave everybody alone. That's what they need to do. So Neil has said, does the Honourable Lady agree? It should apply to everybody. And the response from the Honourable Lady is something to see. Neil keeps his calm in a way that I don't imagine I'd ever be able to. But watch the response, and we'll take it a little bit at a time.
Absolutely right, but there was one digit messaging from his LGBT We do not divide the LGBT community in this place. You can say that you have concerns about what we're doing, but by removing the T, you are suggesting that transgender people do not exist. You are suggesting they are lesser than other LGBT people.
Right, so let's get this absolutely straight. What we've got here is this cringeworthy woman who's a Conservative Party member who's been going around untagging herself in the post she doesn't like, lecturing a gay man, an elder of the gay community, on how they must include LARPing men with fetishes and paraphilias and cross-dressing gusset regarders in their community, right? Because otherwise they don't exist. You're right, woman. You're right, okay? They don't exist separate from us. That's the only way they exist, is if they are attached to us. And you, madam, are a handmaiden that helps AGP paraphiliacs, LARPing women pretending to be gay man, and cross-dressing fetishists turning up in the workplace because of people like you. It's that simple. It's that simple. It really isn't complicated. It's you that's causing this, not anybody else. You and people like you. Gay people don't want anything to do with it. It's LGB. The T has nothing to do with the LGB. Let's see what else she has to say.
From his LGBT. We do not divide the LGBT community in this place. You can say that you have concerns about what we're doing, but by removing the T, you are suggesting that transgender people do not exist. You are suggesting they are lesser than other LGBT people. And I will not stand for that, because it was trans people who stood with gay people at Stonewall. It was
Well, she obviously likes her myths, doesn't she? Because there were no trans people at Stonewall. And Stonewall's got nothing to do with the UK anyway. This is a woman who is completely ill-informed. Completely ill-informed about the history of the gay movement in Britain. And in being ill-informed, what she's allowing herself to do is to lambast an elder of the gay community on his own history, and to state that by doing so, he takes the T off and makes the T lesser. The T isn't anything, woman. The hell is wrong with you? It isn't anything, it's just nonsense. It's absolute arrant nonsense, and it doesn't belong on the LGB, once again, for those of the hard of thinking. Who the hell does she think she is? It is utterly disgusting, and she owes Neil Hanvey and the gay community an apology. Gay constituency, it's not a community. I keep saying that. Gay constituency. She owes us an apology. I want an apology, because what you have just done is displayed the most extraordinary homophobia. The most extraordinary homophobia, the most extraordinary forced teaming, and the rewriting of history to please your somewhat bizarre and completely, black, we don't know why you're doing it, need to support fetishists, perverts, confused women, and anyone else who wants to LARP as part of the gender identity TQ plus homophobic crowd. Who the hell do you think you are?
Kearns is a member of an organisation called Parliamentarians for Global Action, PGA, an international network of approximately 1,300 legislators in over 140 elected parliaments. In March 2021, PGA, in a collaboration with several organisations, including Outright Action International, organised a side event at the United Nations 65th Commission on the Status of Women. The side event was titled Women Leaders as Advocates for Equality and Inclusion of LGBTI plus Persons. Miss Alicia Kearns, Member of Parliament from the United Kingdom, expressed confidence on her country passing soon legislation to ban so-called conversion therapy. Parliamentarians for Global Action have received $412,500 from Arcus Foundation between 2013 and 2021. Other donors include the Open Society Foundations. In July 2021, Kearns received 2 tickets for Wimbledon worth £2,200 from the Brunswick Group. In November 2021, she was treated to dinner by the Brunswick Group. The Brunswick Group claimed to be the world's leading critical issues firm and advised companies on diversity and inclusion.
Companies today are expected to create financial and social value hand in hand.
There is a huge range of societal issues showing up on the agendas of business leaders, executives, boards.
Some are in the environmental arena.
Climate and carbon.
Waste, water,
Plastics or biodiversity.
Workplace misconduct.
Food insecurity and poverty.
To issues around inequality.
youth unemployment,
Diversity, equity and inclusion.
Race, ethnicity, LGBTQ+.
Mental health, modern day slavery.
The number of people who care about a range of issues has evolved from just shareholders to other stakeholders. Those stakeholders could include employees, they could include regulators, and a number of other people who have an interest to see how a company performs, both in the financial markets and in society.
Societal issues will continue to rise up the agenda and will always be moving, and companies need to be responding to them at the highest level.
Business leaders used to focus on financial value alone. This is no longer enough.
And what that means is that stakeholders expect businesses to be part of the solution rather than to remain as part of the problem.
Brunswick's role in helping clients on societal issues is first and foremost helping them understand what's on the radar and what's on the agenda.
Identifying what's actually authentic to them, meaningful to them, somewhere where they can make genuine change.
we help them figure out how they can become part of the solution through the commitments they make in the core business, the partnerships they forge beyond the business, and the way they use their voice as an advocate for change.
And then we help them engage throughout their organization to understand the relationship between these societal issues and what it means to the business.
Brunswick is in the boardroom alongside the leaders of the world's largest organizations on their greatest financial, political, and social challenges.
Brunswick has deep expertise in societal issues. We're able to identify core to the business areas where companies can respond authentically, and we're able to plug into the financial and regulatory expectations as well.
Our understanding is very nuanced, and we enable companies to turn a risk into an opportunity for leadership.
Brunswick's purpose is to help companies play their role in the world successfully. So how to navigate and respond positively to major societal challenges impacting companies has to be at the heart of that.
The Environmental, Social and Corporate Governance and Sustainable Business Global Lead for the Brunswick Group is Jon Miller. He's also founder of Open for Business, a coalition of global companies making the economic and business case for LGBT plus inclusion. He's also contributed an article for the World Economic Forum. Christopher Calvert and Anne-Catherine Richter from Brunswick's London office posed a question to their colleagues. What books would they recommend people read to better understand and empathise with the LGBTQ plus community? Miller recommended Mama's Boy, Preacher's Son by Kevin Jennings. He explained, Kevin is a bit of a personal hero for me. He was a mentor and helped with funding when we were setting up Open for Business. Kevin Jennings was the founder of GLSEN, who pushed gender identity ideology into American schools. GLSEN have received over $2,700,000 from the Arcus Foundation between 2007 and 2018. Miller has made his views on trans-conversion therapy clear. He is a strong supporter of Stonewall, and in September 2023 he tweeted news of a reception hosted by the Brunswick Group and partnered by Outright Action International that brought together LGBTQ plus activists and business leaders. Outright Action International have a strong presence at the United Nations Annual Commission on the Status of Women in 2024. They state, "We cannot accelerate the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls as long as trans women are excluded." They hope to queer the United Nations.
The Commission on the Status of Women happens every year at the UN.
What we want to do is what we call queering the UN.
It's traditionally been a women's rights focused space, and that doesn't always mean it's a feminist space. And it's important that even when it's a feminist space, that we make sure it is a queer, inclusive feminist space.
As sexuality and gender are so intertwined, it's really important for us to be there to push a queer lens there. to be talking about gender and sexual diversity, and to be in rooms saying, if you're talking about women, if you're talking about the rights of women, we need to be talking about LGBTIQ women.
Outright is the secretariat of the UN LGBTI core group, which is a group of member states that wants to push LGBTI issues within the UN. The idea is that we work together with them so that in every single space at the UN, we are also talking about LGBTI issues.
Too often, queer people, queer women are erased from the discussion. Diplomatic priorities, funding priorities, programmatic priorities of governments in all aspects. The direction for that is set at the United Nations.
We're bringing activists doing amazing grassroots work around the world to the UN to directly speak with diplomats, with UN agencies, and with each other.
And when we don't have activists in these spaces, it does not include us. We have to be at those seats. We have to have lesbian, trans, bisexual, gay, intersex voices at the table in order for their expertise to be heard, for their voices to be heard, and for the United Nations to therefore be making the right progress.
LGBTIQ people are everywhere, and they have the same rights as everyone else, but due to their identity, they're often denied those rights. And we need to be doing everything we can to make sure that their full human rights are realized.
I think the United Nations is a really special place for that because we're connecting with people, power brokers, governments from around the world in one single space. And we discover in the queer movement that when we work across borders, that actually people hear from another, they look into the eyes of another person and they say, I see you, I hear you, and then change really happens. And it happens across borders and it happens at the United Nations.
Outright International have received over $2,400,000 from the Arcus Foundation since 2007. The CEO of the Arcus Foundation, John Stryker, is heir to a multi-billion-dollar medical corporation. The Stryker Corporation make money from gender affirmation surgery.